Hi, Donna Ottaviano with the Office of Discipleship and Leadership for the Camden Diocese, and welcome to the first episode of the show. I am delighted to be here with you. So let me give you a little bit of a taste of where we'd like this show to go, and your engagement with this show will be critically important. So understanding what the mission is. So in order to tell you where we're going, I'll tell you a little bit about where we've been. And that is really a church that's in what has been coined as maintenance mode, right? So doing things that we have always done, taking an inward focus, right? Looking more towards the people that are already with us. But what we know is that there are people leaving the church. They leave for all kinds of reasons, not necessarily even our own parishioners are engaged. We certainly know that we have challenges with young people in terms of their reliance or their need or finding relevance in faith, finding reliance and relevance and faith in God. So those are some of the cultural things. And we know the culture draws against people all the time. It's constantly calling them outward, right? There are many things that, fight for our attention. And many of the things of the world are much more appealing and much more satisfying some days. Until people know, until people learn where God plays a role in their life. So we're really about trying to find new and different ways to be the 21st century Christians that have the same mindset as the Christians in the first. So I need you to think about the apostles and the disciples that went forward. So they followed Christ, for the 3 years of his ministry. And then when he left them and he said, go and make disciples of all nations, they did exactly that. Jesus is asking us to do the exact same thing now. So what might that look like for us? So let's anchor first now to baptism. All of us know that baptism washes away our original sin. But there's a call inside of baptism, and that is really a call to discipleship. And that means living radically for Jesus. So what did Jesus teach us to do? Jesus taught us love and serve. Love and serve. So if you think of Jesus as a CEO, he came over 2,000 years ago and founded a global company that still exists today. The mission of that company is love and serve. That's what we're called to do today. Nothing has changed, and we are still part of the company Jesus came to found. So what does it mean to live radically for Jesus? There are going to be lots of topics we're going to talk about over the course of these episodes around what does it mean to live radically for Jesus, to live the way that he taught. And that will require for us to collaborate with him, to allow him to work in our lives. So, what is our prayer life like? What are we asking God to help us to be, right? We all have a universal call to holiness. But we can't make ourselves holy. It's impossible for us to make ourselves holy. Only God can make us holy. And we need to cooperate with him and ask him to make us holy. So think about it. Are you asking God to make you holy? But also inside baptism is a second call, and that is to missionary discipleship. And the difference is that missionary disciples make other disciples. So I want you to think about the apostles after Jesus left. He said, go and make disciples of all nations. And they went. They shared the good news. They shared the story of Jesus. And then inside of that, so the story of Jesus is the kerygma. So the incarnation, the life, the death, the resurrection of Jesus. But those disciples, those apostles in the first century, they shared that story and they shared their own story in the context of the kerygma. So that's really about forming other disciples for Jesus. And that's a really important point. So right now you're thinking, okay, I've been baptized. Yeah, I'm pretty much a disciple. We'll talk about all ways to kind of assess that over all these episodes. Am I living radically for Jesus? But think about forming other disciples in all the ways the culture would have us not form other disciples, right? Living in a culture and in a society that doesn't look fondly, necessarily to a Christian way of living. Where are your closest disciples? They're at your kitchen table, right? Right back here. We have Jesus sitting with his disciples at table, breaking bread. So that's really where our closest disciples are. They're at our kitchen tables. They are our family. They are our friends. They are our coworkers. And in many instances, it can even be the strangers that we come into contact with that we should give an encounter with Jesus. So thinking about all of these things, you're like, I'm not really equipped maybe to make other disciples, but you surely are. So I want you to think about something, is that you have been known for all of eternity to be here now, to be born now in the 21st century. God has fully equipped you. He has given you skills. He has given you gifts. And the most important thing that I would leave you with here today is that you have a mission. Each and every one of us has a mission that God needs us to accomplish, and no one else can do it. I have a particular mission that God has equipped me for that no one else can do but me. So I'm looking for ways to make sure, and listen, not all of us are going to know exactly what the mission is while we're here, but we have to do our best to collaborate and with God and to conform ourselves to His will so that we're contributing. Because remember, we're all part of the mystical body of Christ. So we want to make sure that those are the things we're doing. So thinking about, geez, that could be a little bit hard to be a missionary disciple. I want you to think about what is missionary discipleship and what are the things that we need. So think about what are the fundamental building blocks of missionary discipleship. That is, the first one is encounter. And that's an encounter with Jesus. So as a missionary disciple, how are we enabling an encounter with Jesus for someone else? And the easiest way for you to think about that is, where was mine? Where are my encounters with Jesus? Where are my earliest encounters with Jesus? And have I begun to look for where my encounters are throughout the course of the day? And over the course of a lifetime. All of those things build your story that you could share with someone else. The second fundamental building block of missionary discipleship is a company. So many people need someone to walk alongside of them in their lives. Whether it's a hard season, it's a joyful season, people need people, and we need to be the people to others because there's so many people out there that don't have them. So it's accompaniment, right? And we're doing those things. We're modeling how to live radically for Jesus while we are accompanying them. Then the third element is community. I will bet you right now, you could look all around your neighborhood and you could probably pinpoint a few people that don't have a community. They're alone, they're lonely. So that's the third. And the fourth is send. And that means you have formed other disciples and they will now go forward and they will form other disciples for Jesus. That's really what we are about when we think about discipleship and missionary discipleship. And this is a great movement in the Camden Diocese. And that's really what we're going to focus on in this show, are really practical ways for us to think about how do we do that. So we understand what the building blocks are. We'll talk more about those. We'll talk a little bit about the kerygma because we need to make sure we're sharing the good news, right, of Jesus' incarnation, life, death, and resurrection. But an important piece is knowing our own story. And we're really going to dig into that. Really kind of think, what is the story of my life as I have walked alongside Jesus, or the times I've actually stepped away from Jesus? Because remember, Jesus never steps away from us. So thinking about where this show goes, I'd love to know what kind of topics you want to hear about, what kind of guests you would like to see come on the show and join us to have conversation, because we need to be a church that moves out into the community. So it's really going to be important for parishes to begin to take an outward look at who's in need, who needs Jesus, and know that everyone in the parish is the hands, feet, and face of Jesus to the other. Because there are so many people out there that need hope. They need to know that there's hope and that there's hope in Jesus. So please share your ideas, your suggestions, any idea, any feedback. We would love to hear so we can actually go forward together and be a church that goes out.